architects, or architecture students in your case, but future architects or those who are shaping the built environment, we have to really prioritize beauty because it's one of the things that makes us uniquely human. And so I encourage you to find ways to infuse, arts and culture and beauty into the work that you do because it really, really does matter. You also have to balance what's good for the citizens. And also this list is in alphabetical order. I think they're all important in different ways, but in case you're like, why are we jumping around? But beauty, citizens, making sure that, people from, children all the way to the elderly are well taken care of. It's such an important part of shaping our cities in the future. Culture, that's one of the things that gives a city its unique identity. I spent, actually around this time last week, I was with a group of mayors from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, 6 mayors from smaller cities around the country, and we talked about the importance of identity in their cities, and some of them felt like their city could use a stronger identity to kind of help shape what that city's future could potentially become. Particularly from the lens of sports stadiums, the workshop was about bringing sports and entertainment venues to smaller cities to help spur economic development. And so we had a really robust discussion about a lot of these themes, and so this is fresh in my mind from those conversations. But culture is such an important piece of city life, and so as an architect, or anyone in the space of shaping cities and policy, thinking about how to foster culture is really important. Health is something that I'm really passionate about. In fact, before I decided to become an architect when I was 11, I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to help people. And then I later decided, again at 11, that I wanted to help people by being like a doctor for the built environment. And I saw in 2019 this graphic in Time magazine that showed health disparities in the city of Chicago, where it showed it was like a heat map of the life expectancy by zip code. And I was really disturbed, and still am, that there are certain zip codes on the north side of Chicago where the average life expectancy is 90 years, which is great, but then on the south side of Chicago where economic resources and just backgrounds are different, that life expectancy is 60 years. So we're talking a 30-year gap just within the same city. And so that's another topic that I think, that's a whole other lecture, but I think it's important for us as those who are shaping the built environment to consider how what we do actually impacts the livelihood of people, their health, their well-being, their longevity. Ecology is really important. When I was growing up, we had Captain Planet. I don't know if you even know who that is, but from the early days of my existence, it's always been important to think about the environment, and also it kind of ties into health because the healthier our environment, that actually fosters better health outcomes for us as people. So I've always been passionate about ecology and just making sure we're good environmental stewards. And as architects, we are charged with protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, and our environment is part of our responsibility. Economy is really important for so many reasons. It almost goes without saying, but cities are economic centers, and it's vital that we thrive in environments that have a healthy economy, but also think about the economics of our projects. So there's economy at different scales. But we have to be really mindful of what we're designing, how much it costs, but also what the value can be over the long run. And then last is visitors. Again, this is alphabetical, but every visitor is a potential future resident, and so you want to make really good impressions on the people who are coming to visit your city. So those are the things that cities have to balance. It's not an exhaustive list, but those are the things that kind of kept bubbling to the top when I was in a workshop with mayors last week and just throughout my career. So I want to talk about why I decided to become an architect. When I was 11, I had this epiphany that if I became an architect, then I could actually help to restore what was then the old Hudson's department store. So the images here show what the building looked like in its glory days before I was even born. It actually closed the year that I was born. So by the time I got to 11, this building here, on your far left, it was a version of this, but with, imagine, broken windows and graffiti and just kind of not a great scene. And so I firmly believe that buildings are a symbol of care. And it seemed as if downtown Detroit, where I grew up, really wasn't cared for as well as it could have been. And I had learned what an architect was in a middle school art class, and I said, I'm going to become an architect so that I can basically heal this building and then also heal the surrounding environment. But spoiler alert, as you can tell from the middle image, the building was part of like the largest building implosion in recorded history, which was very sad. So that happened when I was in high school. So I did not get to work on that particular building. But years later, when I worked for the city of Detroit, and city government actually parked at the parking lot that they created, which was like was not what my vision for that building was. But thankfully, over many years, the building actually, or the site, eventually became the second largest tower in Michigan. It just opened recently, the Hudson's Tower. So it can kind of show how over the course of several decades, a city can, really struggle economically and then have, some strong leadership come in and make some good decisions, build what I like to call tri-sector partnerships to make important things happen. And by tri-sector, I mean the public sector, like city leadership, and the private sector, like all the businesses that want to make sure that cities are successful, and then also the philanthropic or not-for-profit sector coming together to really solve our most challenging issues, which is generally how those bigger issues get resolved. So I actually did my thesis project in undergrad studying. I got my 5-year Bachelor of Architecture and studied during my 5th year what happened in Detroit, how can we prevent those kinds of things from happening in the future. And of course, because it was an architecture thesis, I actually had to do a project that talked about, or that dealt with notions of abandonment and what do you do with these lost spaces and memory, and how do you create a future out of that. So I've been passionate about these issues for many years, and I think it's important to just highlight the importance of really building healthy, strong, sustainable cities that are ultimately in service to our people. So I want to talk just briefly about my journey, my career journey. Often students ask me, how did I get to become the 100th president of the AIA, and what happened with, just graduation from architecture school, like what did you do? And so, and I will say that it wasn't, I didn't graduate, or I wasn't even in school thinking, I'm going to become president of AIA. That was never an aspiration. It just sort of happened organically. And I often tell students, or really anyone who asks, oftentimes when you have ideas about how things can be a little bit better, when you voice those ideas, they put you in charge of that thing. And so over the course of my time in school, I remember joining NOMA as a student, and then going to the NOMA conference, and then getting invited to join the NOMA board as a new graduate. Served on the NOMA national board for a number of years, and then had lots of ideas, had lots of suggestions that became my initiatives, and that kind of grew into eventually me becoming NOMA president, and had some good success with that, with a wonderful team that supported me, and then that spurred someone's strong suggestion that I run for AIA president, and so that's what I did in 2022, and that's how I became the 100th president in 24. So in terms of what I actually did, these are all the logos of my life, as I like to call it. And so I won't go into all of them because I've lived a lot of life at this point, but I will kind of pull out some of the details. Again, I started in Detroit. All my education before college was in either Detroit or right outside of Detroit. Joined NOMA as a student, and then joined AIA shortly thereafter. Worked in many firms. I've worked in the federal government. I've worked in city government. I've been very involved with my alma mater, Cornell, on the Alumni Advisory Council for the architecture school, and then eventually I was asked to run for the Board of Trustees. So I'm actually finishing up my 4-year term on the Board of Trustees at Cornell right now. I serve on the board for the Chicago Architecture Biennial, which I hope that you got to see when I was here, but if not, check out the next one in 2027. And then actually I might be, yeah, it's over there. So AIA was 2024 is when I was president, and then I served as the chair of the search committee for the new AIA CEO in 2025, so I actually really just finished last year my duties for AIA, and around this time last year I got recruited to join a company called Amrise. So I'll talk about Amrise a little bit later in the presentation, but people often ask, like, you know, I was a principal at HOK for about 6 years, and I had spent 3 years of my career earlier working at HOK, so almost about 10 years at the firm, and I decided when I was talking to this recruiter, again, around this time last year, that I wanted to try something a little bit different that actually allowed me to work with lots of different architecture firms. So that's something that Amrise offers, but also wanted to help really accelerate decarbonization work, and that's what Amrise does as well with materials that offer lower carbon solutions. So that's the high level reason, but I'll get into some of the more, some additional details later. At this point, I've lived in 7 different cities, and here they are. So if you are from any of these places or are interested in going there after graduation, feel free to talk to me after. But ultimately, my mission, which I developed, I feel like this has always been my mission, but I actually really articulated it in words maybe like 15 years ago, and that's to improve the quality of people's lives by design. And so whether I work at a traditional architecture firm, or I work in city government or the federal government, or I work for a building solutions company, this is really kind of what I'm trying to get at. And you know, there's the work that you do sort of 9 to 5, or generally it's longer than 9 to 5, but there's also the, you know, the board work or volunteer work. And so I happen to volunteer on the board for the Chicago Architecture Biennial, which I mentioned, Ingenuity Chicago, which is an organization that works to ensure that every Chicago public school student has access to a high quality arts education. And then I'm also on the executive committee for the Chicago Central Area Committee, which works to ensure that the central area of Chicago is well considered and sort of supporting the plans for the future of Chicago. So, I get to do a lot of this work in different spaces, and also I have the wonderful opportunity to lecture to students. So again, thank you, Francisco and David, for inviting me to be here. It's such an honor to share this knowledge and just have an exchange with you about what the future could look like. So if any of you happen to already follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I was very active when I was AIA president. In fact, I did a post every single Monday. So for 52 weeks, there's a post. If you don't follow me already, feel free to follow me. Just look for my name. My handle is KND7112. But the point is, I did a lot of different things. And I certainly won't go through all of it, but this is kind of a screenshot of many of the 52 posts that I did. But the biggest theme that really came from all the travel across the US and even across the world, AI is the largest design organization in the world with over 200 chapters. And I got to visit like 12 different countries and dozens of cities. So one of the common themes was that affordable housing is a major issue almost everywhere, from Hawaii, which I was actually a little bit surprised by, to to Nairobi, Kenya, to different parts of the U.S., continental U.S. And so that's something I think is really important for us to think about, just housing, the future of housing, and how we as architects can help contribute to that. The other theme, and so AI's mission is to empower and inspire architects to improve society and transform the world. And two of the key priorities are climate action and equity. And so I spoke a lot about those particular topics, and I think a lot of the climate work or climate action work is going to be different from one region to the next for obvious reason, because weather issues are different. But I think everyone is struggling to figure out what specifically they can do. And then the other issue is just really trying to raise the public profile of the architect. So one of the ideas that I contributed in my president-elect year was to actually promote this notion of the chief architect or city architect for cities, specifically mayors, to hire an architect as their key advisor on issues related to their city. There's often a planning director, but I think it's important to actually elevate that conversation more specifically to urban design and architecture for specific projects that are of great importance. So those are some of the things that I did when I was AIA president, and still cheering them on from the side, but we have a new president, and so I'm hoping to support him this year as I can from just my role as a former president. But if you want to know what I did, check me out on Instagram. And also just in general, I use Instagram a good amount. How many people are on TikTok? Well, actually, I'm not really on TikTok, but that's another good venue. But I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. So I encourage you all to like definitely reach out to professionals, especially as you're, I mean, how many people are looking for a job? Okay, more hands. Definitely use LinkedIn as a tool for that. Feel free to connect with me and then see who I'm connected with. I mean, just feel free, it's kind of open source. And just learn about what people have done. If you see someone who has like a really cool job, go into their profile and kind of see what some of the things they've done over the course of their career, so that you can just get some ideas as to the different pathways that people can take. So I want to talk briefly about why cities matter. I think it's obvious because I love cities, but maybe not everyone necessarily has that feeling. But cities, I mean, it's where arts and culture and people come to like really, convene with one another. I love cities. I have lived in 7 of them at this point, although. Ithaca was pretty small, and Cambridge was also small. But I love big, robust cities with lots of culture and lots of life. But I mean, that's a personal taste. How many other people here love cities? Okay, a good number. So roughly in the U.S. today, 80% of people live in cities, but across the world, just over 50%. But by 2050, it will be probably closer to 75% of the entire world's population living in cities. One of the other positive things about cities is that they offer a more sustainable footprint because the density helps to with the efficiency of materials and all that. So that's my plug for cities. For those of you who are on the fence, definitely just check it out for a summer if you've not had the experience. But it's just such a great place to learn and grow and connect with people, and also reduce your carbon footprint. I mean, the other reason is, which is sort of what I said, but here's some specific words to kind of encapsulate it. I think cities are the epicenter of modern civilization, and who doesn't want to be a part of that? So that's my quick plug for cities. But now I want to shift gears and talk about building the future. And so often when I talk to groups of students, I encourage them to foresee the future. There are 4 C's that, when I think about or when I talk about like what my secret to success, although I don't think that's really a thing, but at least some of the guiding forces in my career, it really starts with curiosity. And so I encourage students to really ask the questions, why don't we have, actually I'll give a very specific example from my real life. When I was a college student, I was working for the General Services Administration in DC in the Office of the Chief Architect. And my supervisor at the time, he gave me a magazine and he flagged an article entitled The Ethics of Brick, which was written by Lance Hosey. And that article talked about the triple bottom line, and that's social, economic, environmental. And at that time, I thought to myself, well, this is really important. Why is it that we're not talking about this more? So at that point in time, it was like 20 years ago, the GSA required all federal buildings to achieve some level of LEED certification. But there was nothing that really pointed to like the social issues that I think are also really important. So I just basically said we should have something like LEED, but for social issues, and we should call it SEED. And so at that point in time, the SEED network, the precursor to the SEED network was born because some college kid read a magazine and asked the question, like, why don't we have this? And so the SEED network still exists, and it really, it works to make sure that projects are thinking about the social, economic, and environmental aspects of project. And the SEED mission is to advance the right of every person to live in a socially, economically, and environmentally healthy community. So again, curiosity is asking the question, but then having a level of creativity, which is great that you're in architecture school because creativity is our medium, but having the creativity to really think about, how do we solve this problem? The question that I just posed, how can I be a part of the solution or creating the answer? And then it requires a lot of courage to speak up and say, hey, I noticed this problem, I have this idea, I think we should do this. You know, like give yourself a little bit of a pep talk, but go and do it, because you know, that courage is really important to get things done. And then you also have to be consistent. Consistent and persistent, but I couldn't use P because that doesn't work with the 4C framework. But anyway, the point is, it's so vital that we, you know, ask the questions, come up with at least some of the solutions, and then, you know, build coalitions to make sure that we, you know, can move things forward. So having that courage and being consistent and just kind of continuing to follow up is really important. And so now here's the commercial break for the company that I joined about 5 months ago. So it's still relatively new. This is somewhat new content for me, but I joined AmRise to build my ambition, or build our ambition collectively, about 5 months ago. So just very high level, I want to get to like the conversation part, but AmRise is a huge company. It's like 19,000 people, over 1,000 sites throughout the US and Canada, fully focused on North America, and over 100 years of experience. It used to be a part of a large global company called Wholesome, and so Wholesome basically had a fully North American spinoff about a year ago, or in June of 2025, and so that became AmRise. So that's the company that I now work with. And just so you know, these are the products that AmRise supplies, but with a special focus on really offering innovative solutions that help to kind of reduce our environmental footprint and speed to construction and all the things that are important to building our ambition. And then this is kind of the network of where all the products are. And I have to say, as an architect, I had actually never been to like a quarry or, you know, the sites where like our stuff is made, and it was fascinating. I went in December and I learned a ton. I actually want to start to bring, in fact, I'm bringing a group of students to visit one of our sites next week, and so I'm excited to just, you know, get people out there to understand where our things are made and how they're made, and how, as architects, we have the power to specify the products that, you know, will have the most optimal impact. And so why did I decide to make this move? I think it's, getting an email, sorry. So I decided to make this move because, like I mentioned before, I think it's important to build awareness around our agency as architects to specify materials that improve outcomes. And then also, buildings contribute significantly to our carbon footprint. And of that large percentage, well, 40% roughly, 11% is related to embodied carbon, specifically building materials and construction. And so one of the things that I'm looking to do, again, this is a relatively new adventure for me, but just looking to advance conversations throughout the industry, starting with architects, but also engineers and contractors, to really help us push for a more sustainable set of solutions. And so just high level, resilient materials are really important, high performance products, speed to build, because we actually have a shortage of construction workers all across the country. That was another thing that I noticed when I was AIA president, was just this issue with not having enough people to do the work, and so speed is a concern. But if you can leverage materials and technology to help address that, then that helps. Also, transparent material data, specifically environmental product declarations, are an important tool as we try to quantify the impact of our products, and then also supporting local economies. The company, AmRise, is a $12 billion company that has a huge impact on all the different, the 1,000 sites that it operates, and so leveraging that for progress is also something I'm really interested in. Also, I wanted to show off some of your alumni, the work of your alumni. So Jeannie Gang is a UIAC alum, and this is Populous Hotel in Denver. And it's designed by Studio Gang, and also includes some of AmRise's low carbon concrete as part of the foundation. So I wanted to, one, highlight the project and shout out Jeannie Gang or Studio Gang, but also talk about the importance of innovative materials as we shape the future. And so how many people are familiar with the LEED rating system and all the different, okay, so many hands. I won't go into all the details, but the point is the products that we provide offer an opportunity to kind of get additional points through the LEED rating system, so that's another kind of benefit. But I think more importantly, it's about strengthening communities and finding ways to create jobs and economic development within the sites where we work, but also supporting mayors, which is partly why we're involved with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and supporting them as they think about what the future of their cities look like. Also want to shout out Carol Ross Barney and Ross Barney Architects, who designed the Chicago Riverwalk, which also includes some of Amri's products. So that's another reason for this particular image. But if you think about well, I did not live in Chicago before the Riverwalk was transformed, but what I've heard is that it was such a transformative project, and it had great support from Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and also, so basically it's another example of that tri-sector relationship building that's so important. The public sector really saying, hey, we want to transform our riverfront. The private sector raising, the funds, and then also working with Ross Barney Architects and others to create a really wonderful intervention, and also a lot of philanthropic dollars had to go in to make it work. But I mean, how many people have been to the Chicago Riverwalk? Okay, how many people love it because it's cool? So again, that's another example. And if you ever hear Carol Ross Barney talk about her work, she definitely talks about the importance of environmental stewardship. And again, materials are a part of that. Obviously, design overall is more than just materials, but I want to encourage us to think about materials a little bit more. And so the last slide I'm just going to talk to you before I invite David up to join me for a fireside chat is, designing a career and building your future. I like to say that, you have the ability to be a traditional architect, whatever that truly means, but also there are so many opportunities outside of traditional architecture. And so I like to say there's those who practice architecture and there's those who practice beyond architecture. And I don't think there's a hierarchy there. I think that they should be seen as both very valuable to our society. And even within practicing traditional architecture, I think about my work for over a decade in firms, and there are really like 4 major pathways, and there's like a 5th one that's emerging. But I'll just talk about them very briefly, and then I'll mention some of the beyond architecture opportunities that you can consider. But there's the design principle, that is responsible for the design of an office, generally speaking. There's the managing principle, who's really responsible for the management, budget, hiring, scheduling, all the things that are vital to the health of a practice. There's the technical principal, who ensures that the design work is technically sound and is really responsible for that, protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public piece, because that person is really stamping the drawings and will be accountable for the technical aspects of the work. And then there's the marketing principle. In fact, that was a role that I had prior to my current position. And that role is really about, as we used to call it, feeding the machine, making sure that new projects are coming in that are interesting and that can help the practice to grow and to recruit and retain people and all the things that are part of kind of the business health. But I think there's another part of it where you're also advocating for architects, and so I kind of use marketing and advocacy in similar ways. And so I actually did advocacy, obviously, when I was NOMA president and when I was AIA president. So I think we need architects to speak to the general public about what we do so that we can, in a way, translate, because sometimes we get in trouble for what's known as archaspeak, and regular people just want to know what we're trying to say. And so we have like translators in our community, and so I'm happy to be a translator for some of the things that are a little more cerebral than the general public would pick up. And then so those are like the 4 major ones, again, design, technical, management, and marketing or advocacy. And then a 5th one that's emerging is more on the technology, like AI and building information modeling. So those who are really focusing on ensuring that the practice is healthy from a technology standpoint. We're seeing more and more people go into that space as well, which is, again, they're all important. And so you might have an inclination towards one of those 5 paths, or you might be really interested in solving social issues in Puerto Rico, which there was a studio that I walked through earlier today where, where that was, part of the topic, or social issues in Chicago. And maybe instead of, practicing in the traditional sense, in a firm, maybe you are, working in city government, and you are creating policies that help to facilitate the kinds of work that your peers in firms are looking to do. So there are lots of different opportunities. I think about when my class from architecture school graduated. We graduated around the 2008 crisis, so a lot of us had to get really creative about what we did outside of traditional architecture, because those jobs became really scarce because of the crisis. And so I have classmates who went into real estate development. I have classmates who have gone into fine arts. I've had classmates go into theater, business, all kinds of things. And they're thriving, but they're able to use their creativity to bring what they learned in architecture school to these other things. And I celebrate that for them. I think we need all kinds of people to both serve in architecture, traditional architectural roles, to create the built environment that we aspire to have, but then also those to help facilitate that in other ways. So I leave it to you to design your career as you would like to see it. And also, based on all the logos that I showed on that previous slide, don't be afraid to try different things. You get one life, but you have many opportunities to experiment, and so I encourage you to do that. So design your career, build the future, which is the name of the talk. And I thank you for your time, and I invite David up for a little Q&A, or fireside chat and Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Kimberly, again for your talk, and for really sort of giving us not just an overview of how your career panned out and how you went through sort of various, not just places of work, but really places that you could actively engage with people, with teams that you're working with, the community, and really have an effect, right, on at very different scales. And I think that's an important aspect for all of us when we're working in architecture to really consider. And you really sort of went through this idea of curiosity, creativity, courage, and consistency, which oftentimes we tell students, right, one thing that you should never ask permission for is have the curiosity for things, right? Curiosity is the sort of the first step before you're able to get to any sort of outcome. And I think that was a sort of incredible message there. And I think, as we're kind of approaching this time in architecture, and our students here studying and going through a sort of a very a curriculum, and then going to a practice that has a sort of format, and following that format oftentimes through either the NCARB and the licensing exams and all these processes that are sort of embedded within this larger system. I think the first question that I have is what is the profession's biggest blind spot right now?
I think that the profession has a few different blind spots, but I think the biggest one is, and we're aware of it, but we have to actually do more about it, and that's really preparing ourselves for the rapid technological changes that we are seeing happen, from week to week, with artificial intelligence becoming more and more a part of our everyday lives. I was just at another university a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to some seniors, and they said, ChatGPT came out my freshman year, so I don't actually know college without the assistance of ChatGPT. And they expressed some concern about how younger students, they obviously got it when they were in high school, and so there are questions about the ability to kind of solve problems without ChatGPT. And I think a little bit like, how with calculators, it's like you can do math in your head, but it's harder because we don't require ourselves to do it because we use our phone or we use our calculator. And so I think there's similar concerns about AI and not being able to really build that creative muscle early enough in our development. And so I think a blind spot right now is just coming up with ways to ensure that people are, getting trained to think critically without the computer, but then also really using the computer or AI and other technologies as a tool to like supercharge the work that you're trying to do. And so basically using it in the right way. And I think we're all still trying to figure out what is the best way to do it without sacrificing it's almost like a muscle, like working out. Like if you don't work out, then your muscles will become less effective, and like the brain is kind of similar. And so I think we have to still use our brains, but then also not lose sight of like the tasks that AI just makes way easier. And so we need kind of like clear guidelines on like when to use it, when not to use it. There are lots of questions around ethics around AI, especially as it relates to authorship and things like that. And so the blind spot is embracing it, because my one fear, one of them is that other professions are going to figure it out before us, and then more of our scope gets taken by contractors or real estate brokers or owners reps. And there's nothing wrong with those professions or the folks who are doing that work, but I've seen them sort of say, oh, you don't need the architect to do that because we can do that. And so if they're able to kind of get a stronger handle on the technology before us as a profession, then I think that that weakens our ability to do our work. So those are some of the things that kind of come to mind right away.
And with that also comes the sort of the understanding the responsibility, right, from the architect, from the architecture, and the effects he has on the people, right? I mean, I think when we engage AI as tools, right, that gives us a sort of an upper hand on certain things, but with that comes responsibility in many ways.
We have to move quickly.
Right.
And I think that we're so but we're preoccupied by our studio projects or just other things, and we need somebody to really keep their eyes on the prize here. So.
Yeah. And I think it's also this idea that that there's a sort of urgency, and you talked about sort of AI, and we can sort of pose that also as a skill building for the students, and that schools should be a place for them to learn how to build those skills that perhaps the industry is asking for, and do it fast in some ways because we want to be ahead rather than following. And I think do you think architecture today it's sort of more reactive, or is it actually leading the AEC sort of industry?
I actually think we're more reactive than we should be. I'd love for us to be more proactive, but I think we just get bogged down with a lot of other tasks. And so those who are better leveraging technology, they're able to really kind of get out ahead of us. And again, that kind of ties into that fear that I articulated before. And so we have to really carve out the time and the resources, which are constrained because we're not a very high margin business. And so the managing people, we rely on them to make sure that, we're, bringing in projects that are profitable and, they're managed profitably so that we can actually invest in research and development. But oftentimes that doesn't quite pan out. And so as a profession, we don't have as much that we've been able to think about far into the future. So by virtue of that, we're more reactive than proactive.
Along that lines, what do you think architecture or architects should stop doing now?
Architects should stop doing work for free.
Yeah.
Immediately. Just stop it.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Don't work for free.
Yeah.
Charge everybody.
Because think about it. Would you go to your doctor and say, hey, I really just want you to spend an hour with me. I know that you still are paying back your medical school loans, but it's me. So just, I can give you future opportunities where I might pay you. Would your doctor say, oh, yeah, that's fine, just whatever,
Right.
No.
Yeah.
And lawyers definitely wouldn't do that. Like, basically, no one else does that except for architects, because we love what we do, as we should, but we also put a ton of time into learning how to do what we do. I mean, on average, it takes 12 years to become a licensed architect in the US, and I really think people need to think about that as they're giving away free services. And even, you know, marketing pursuits, those require tons of time. And I think it's important, and actually I think that's where AI could be more helpful. You know, before AI, which again, we're still trying to figure out, it would take hours and hours and hours to put together proposal responses for a project that may not even be real. That's actually the craziest part. There are clients who are like, all right, let me get an architect. And then like, well, okay, you guys are younger, so you probably haven't bought a house. But if you've ever bought a house, generally speaking, like the real estate broker is like, hey, could you send proof of funds, right? Because like, I don't know that I want to waste my time until I know that you actually have the money to buy this house. And so then you send them, you know, the amount that you have in your bank account, or a letter from the bank that says, yes, this person can afford, and then they talk to you. Architects don't do that. We're like, oh, this sounds like a really cool idea, and then the client comes up with all this stuff that they want you to do, and then you do it in hopes that you get the project. You're like, congratulations, you have the project. I actually don't have any money, but like, you know, when I do get the money, I'm gonna be super excited to work with you. Like, that happens a lot, actually. Yeah. And so there should be things in place that kind of protect architects from doing that, which is pretty damaging to the health of the practice.
I think it's something that you start from the beginning in many ways, right? Going into the practice and advocating for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's a matter of changing now, because we always say when I get to a level, or when I get promoted to a new sort of level, I can make the change. I think it's about advocating from the moment you walk in the door,
yes,
and not be afraid of doing that.
And I think your generation, like, I think you all have a reputation of being very like communicative about what you will and will not do. Keep that energy.
Yes, and that is true. That is true. Don't I know it in studio? I have a more personal question, and I think it has to do with sort of reflection on sort of your career, your path. What is something that you once believed about architecture that you had to unlearn, or you actually has come to a realization that perhaps wasn't what you thought of?
Well, when I was 11, I thought architecture was way different than what the reality is. I mean, I learned that like 10 years later when I was in my early 20s. And I thought that architects were like in control of like all the things. And actually, I think that we should actually have more agency, but we're often subject to, I mean, the biggest thing is just financial constraints. You know, oftentimes like the developer, the owner, or, you know, the government, like, you know, they're the ones who really hold the keys. And I think architects should have a lot more of an ability to shape how things happen. And so that's actually why I went to get my Master of Public Administration after I got my Bachelor of Architecture, because, you know, public policy and just public leaders have such a tremendous impact on what gets built, by who, where the financing comes from, all those things. And so, and there are just so many other stakeholders in the development process that have more power and more authority. And the thing is, like, architects create so much value. Yeah. And I guess what I would say I had to unlearn was, okay, well, we're not treated the way that we should be. And so that's actually partly what I wanted to do, what I aspired to have happen when I was AI president, to like really elevate the conversation around what architects do and what, you know, the value that we bring, which is why I you know, really push for that chief architect initiative, because I do think that mayors could use our guidance. Obviously, not just any architect, like somebody who really has the right kind of skill set and thinking around those big systemic issues. Yeah. So yeah, I think architects should be in charge more, basically. Yeah.
Because the computer's reminding us that dinner's in 4 minutes. We'll actually open up questions to the audience. So we have one question right up there. Perfect. We'll use the mic so that it actually gets on the recording.
It's not a strict dinner schedule. It's just the guidelines from your email.
Yes,
as to what
that's
we're
my
doing.
fault.
I'm not even hungry. So.
Hello, my name's Cole Yazel. My undergrad was in urban planning and development. And earlier you spoke about your initiative to encourage mayors to employ and make room in their cabinets for architects, chief architects. I'm curious, and I think you were just starting to talk about it as well towards the end of the Q&A here. What specific issues do you think planners have a blind spot to?
That's a good question. I mean, I so appreciate what planners bring to the table. In fact, something I said, I hope I can get my quote right, because I made it up, but then I sometimes shuffle it around. But I think planners do a really good job of designing what goes where, you know, from a planning perspective. But architects really help us to understand why you want to be there. Like, you know, like the sense of place, the sense of identity, the culture, the sort of art and science of it all, like that's what architects bring uniquely. And so I think the two together it's a really powerful combination. And I think that to only have just that high level kind of bird's eye view is sort of missing the texture, you know, at the urban design level or the individual building level or, you know, the landscapes like that make our cities. And so I think that it's just so vital to have, you know, people who can operate at multiple scales. And in theory, it's true that like one person could do multiple things, but I think that's a lot of work for anyone, you know, with a role in city government to think about the big picture and the sort of individual building scale or again the kind of urban scale. And so I think planners. I mean, I don't want to pick on planners as like having a blind spot, but I do think that they're trained in a way that is different than how we're trained as architects, and I think that you know, our superpower as architects is really thinking about design critically and iterating and, you know, bringing in lots of precedents and also tying in, you know, like I've mentioned before, it's an art and a science, and I feel like it's just so unique, and it needs to be celebrated and elevated, and like I said before, more architects need to be in charge of things, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Giorgio, and thank you for your lecture today. I guess from what you have said, I understand that you characterize architecture as a reactive member in the field of construction, and what are other ways that AIA and other organizations are working to change this position?
Yeah, well, I know that the AIA has a lot of different initiatives that are happening all at the same time. There's a community of what they call knowledge communities. So, there are knowledge communities about housing and sustainability and you know, emerging professionals, all kinds of things. In fact, check out AIA.org and you'll see all the different opportunities there. But also, more recently, there's been a task force that's been created around AI to deal with the issues that I just said I'm concerned about. So AI knows, in fact, when I was president, we started those conversations, but the task force just got stood up recently because sometimes it takes a while to organize things. So that group is working on that now. And then NOMA has a number of initiatives that, you know, they're focused on you know, diversity and justice and equity and inclusion in the profession. The Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture, as the name suggests, are focused on, you know, that group is focused on architectural education and how to make sure that you all are coming out and prepared to really take on these big challenges. There's the National Architecture Accreditation Board, which comes to the schools to make sure that you know, all the schools remain accredited and are doing the things that that are really required for a successful career. There's the National Council of Architecture Registration Boards. They're the regulators. And for those of you who are interested in getting your license, you definitely have to go through them for that process, for testing and things like that. And so there's this whole network. I think those are the 6 organizations. The American Institute of Architecture students, which, how many people are AIS members here? Okay, NOMAS members, okay. So many campuses, those 2 groups work closely together, which is great to just, again, make sure that the student voice is well represented. So those are the groups that make up what we call the Architecture Alliance organization, and that's the group that really is, that's our community, that's our advocacy group. So if you have any issues, like one of the 6 of them should be able to handle it, and if they are not able to do it, then that's when you start to be curious. You start to ask, like, why do we not have this? Get creative around what they can be doing, and have the courage to say, hey, you're not doing this thing that we really need, and then be consistent about making sure they do. And then that's when they put you in charge. Then you'll be president, and you'll be sitting on stage one day.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you so much for your lecture. I was just wondering about how you were talking about AmRise and how they supply materials, and it doesn't sound like a traditional firm. So I was wondering what your role as an architect is at like a company like AmRise.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So AmRise is an advanced building solutions company, offers a wide range of materials, and the reason why I decided to make the move is to help to really advocate for more of those materials to be used. So my specific title is VP of Strategic Partnerships, and so I'm creating partnerships with major firms, with universities, with companies, particularly like hyperscalers like Meta and Amazon and Microsoft, to like actually supercharge the decarbonization efforts that some of the companies that are larger and they're creating really large projects, accelerating their usage of materials that have lower carbon content. So for example, we recently worked on, actually with UIUC, which apparently you guys have like a really like serious cement, like concrete studies program. So I'm actually visiting them tomorrow, so I can't talk about it until tomorrow, but some of the engineering students are going to show me around their lab to really understand like how they're innovating on the concrete side. But AmRise worked with UIUC and Meta to create a lower carbon concrete. So this concrete is like 40% lower CO2 than like regular concrete, which again it's not a silver bullet to like the climate crisis. But imagine if we can get more architects, more engineers, and contractors to work with these materials that that have just a stronger or a lower carbon footprint, I should say, that moves the needle ever so slightly. So my role is to help to kind of elevate those issues and just offer alternative options, basically.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Anna. Thank you for your lecture. I wanted to ask you about, I guess I really related to what you said about what inspired you to be an architect, because I grew up around an abandoned mall that had been part of my childhood for a long time, and I think it's something very human to see something that has such an impact on you and think, I want to change how that happened and affect the care that you bring into the world around you. And I guess a question I had was, what do you think we can do as students and people who don't have the experience yet to be as proactive? How would you encourage students to become more proactive? Would you say reading helps more, being on LinkedIn or just being aware of all the issues that are happening yeah, just like how would you suggest maybe becoming more of a proactive like architect?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you for the comment and the question. One other thing I usually say in my lectures, but I forgot this time, but the most sustainable building is the one that already exists. I'm a huge advocate for adaptive reuse, and I don't know if the mall is still standing, but if it is, hopefully you get to work on its revitalization at some point in the future. So that's maybe where I would start, is just like challenging you, or not challenging, that sounds like a duel, encouraging you to think about what the future of that mall could be, and like maybe writing a letter to the mayor and saying, hey, I'm an architecture student, you know, this building is meaningful to me because of X, Y, Z, and I'd love it if you would consider, who knows, maybe they'll hire you as like their first chief architect when you get out of school. But I think it's so important for us as architects to understand the power of our vision and to actually use our voice to change things. When I was in college, I didn't get any like buildings renovated, but I used like letter writing as a way to like, to get things changed. When Hurricane Katrina happened in 2005, I remember my school was like really, helpful with bringing students from Tulane to campus to just acknowledge that they were displaced, but there were several HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities, that were also impacted by the hurricane. And so I wrote a letter, and they like brought some of the students to campus. And so that was like my first foray into like writing letters to get things changed. And so I write letters all the time for things that I think should change. And so that's one thing I would strongly encourage you to just, again, be curious, like why is it like this? And then think creatively around like what specifically can be done to address the situation, have the courage to articulate that. And personally, I think it's best to like directly send the letter to the person and don't put it on the internet first, because that's just like kind of rude to put, give people like the chance to like address the issue privately. But then I think there's also ways to build coalitions, and definitely leveraging social media to kind of like build an awareness if there's like a campaign or like a petition or something that you feel really passionately about something happening. Don't be afraid to use your voice to really start to change that. And definitely reading and joining organizations that are doing the things that you think are really important. Just getting involved. Like many things, the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got involved, so involved with NOMA and then AIA, and just generally being a champion for improving things in our profession. You're welcome.
Any other questions out there? Also, just to sort of end the conversation and the presentation,
We're 9 minutes.
We're 9 minutes past,
dinner,
right?
I'll have to figure out how to make that not do this the next time I give a presentation.
Right.
Sorry, it's a little
No,
distracting.
You're fine. You're fine. Given the times, I guess my last question is, what gives you real optimism right now?
The future, you guys. I mean, truly, like I think it's so energizing for me to come and meet with students who are not disillusioned by the world, like those of us who've been out for a while, some of us. But I mean, you bring such fresh perspectives, and you are here because you want to change the world, many of you. And I think that's so refreshing, and we need people to kind of like fill in the gaps, because a lot of people have veered off and are like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on other stuff. But the passion and dedication I think that you're going to bring into the profession is so valuable and so important. And even like the tools that you'll have, that, like, for example, have you figured out AI yet? Like, I don't know, I feel like I don't have time. But like you guys, I mean, you're like, this is your world. So like maybe someone can like mentor me on the best ways to leverage those tools. But I think that the way that you are thinking about the world and training, I think it's just going to be a breath of fresh air once you get into the profession. I know that with economic uncertainty, it's difficult to find summer internships. But I encourage you to be persistent, like really. And also, I was sharing earlier, actually with you, that if someone doesn't respond to your email, it's not because they don't care, they don't want to hear from you, but like they probably just like with your email from 5 years ago, sorry. I flagged it and I unread it. I was like, this is important, and then I like completely got distracted. And so I encourage you to just follow up, and I would say follow up to like 3 times. Then after that, maybe give it up. But the point I'm trying to make here is like never take it personally. No one is ever like, oh, I don't like the way that person wrote this email. It's more so just a bandwidth issue. Also, people assume that I have an assistant. I do not. So that's another thing. So I think that it's vital that you set a vision for yourself. I shared my personal mission statement earlier. Find whatever that is for you, and then try to like really seek out things that help you to do that, and then write letters or do outreach, and tap into your network. That's another reason why I really flagged LinkedIn as a great resource, because you'd be surprised by who you might know is connected to someone who you are trying to work with, and just, basically be shameless. Tap into your alumni network. I think people who go to your school are more enthusiastic about making sure that you're successful because you're one of them, and so doing that is important. But stay encouraged, stay persistent. You're all going to land somewhere, even though it might seem bleak at times. I promise you're gonna be just fine. But I'm hopeful, that you'll get the jobs that you're looking for, and that you will breathe new life into this profession and challenge us to be who we need to be. And I have to say, like, I was talking to students, another group of students 2 weeks ago, and from my alma mater, and I was in their seats literally 20 years ago, which goes by super fast, by the way. Doesn't it go by super fast? Super fast. And so, I encourage you, don't waste time, because you're going to blink and you'll be in your early 40s, and you're like, okay, well, that was fast. The other thing is, I remember complaining, I'm like, why isn't this profession doing X, Y, and Z? And now I'm like, I don't blame myself, but I'm like, I haven't had enough time to like fix things. And so we need more people to like really join the fight to like make things better. Because I was like the same complaints that you probably have right now. I promise you I had them 20 years ago, unless it was like about AI, because that wasn't a thing back then. But I think as a profession, we have so much potential, so much that we can be doing, that we should be doing, but we're limited by, for different things, different reasons. But you have to join the fight and bring your unique perspective and your fresh energy with the rest of us who are still disillusioned a little bit, but we're just, every day we're continuing to move it forward. Has that been your experience? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Were you, when you entered the profession, were you like, oh, this is perfect, I'm good?
Yes and no. I was excited about it, and then I got disillusioned, and then I left architecture, like my students know, and I tell the story fairly well, right? It's like, I left architecture because I was angry at it, because it wasn't what I thought it would be. And I don't think I actually appreciated it until I came back, and I saw it from a very different perspective. And it encouraged me, I think, to seek other sort of paths of what architecture is, right? And creating my own sort of trail and track. And then I ended up being here in academia and hopefully encouraging future architects to do, other things that perhaps are not listed in the, approved list of architectural things to do, and move the needle a little bit by little bit. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, well said. We're all moving the needle.
Exactly. All right. Once again, thank you, Kimberly, for your presentation and for being here with us today.
And we're only 16 minutes past dinner.
16 minutes past dinner. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Stay tuned for communications from the school for our next lectures. We will have Professor Marcy Uline present her book that she published on Rickers assignments and writings this week, and we'll send an announcement earlier tomorrow. That will be during the 12 to 1 period on Wednesday. Thanks, everybody, for being here.